Good morning, everyone. We are about to start, so I invite you to take your seats, please. So, good morning, honorable members of parliament, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues here. I'm Victor Quesada. I serve as a partnership specialist in FAO headquarters in Rome, where I work in the Parliamentary Networks team unit. And it's a big pleasure for me to moderate the session of this second day of this regional parliamentary summit on agri-food system. I really trust that yesterday's discussion, debates, and breakout sessions laid the foundations for the important actions that you have been taking as member of parliament in your countries. Throughout the plenary, the sessions on the groups, which I had the privilege to join a few of them, you explore a range of challenges, but at the same time opportunities, and particularly for this region. And the idea for this second day is to build on these discussions. The following session, it's about reporting what you have been discussing in the breakout groups, and will allow us to identify areas of shared understanding from one side, and also to learn from each country unique experiences. So while the challenges you face in your countries, or as you as a member of parliament, and just to name a few, climate change, trade restrictions, access to market, rural extension services, the need for more and better investment in agriculture, food safety, food standards issues, water management, just to name a few, or even empowering farmers, that it was mentioned many times during your interventions, which is clear that these challenges are universal. But the legislative responses must be adapted to your country and regional level. And what is also clear here is that the parliamentarians play a pivotal role on addressing this. For example, the debates you engage, the legislation you pass, the oversight you provide to make governments accountable, the budgets you approve are pivotal, are key to ensuring this progress. So these actions not also ensure food security and nutrition, but also support to have sustainable livelihoods, a healthy environment for the people that you represent. And this is one of the main functions you have, the people that you represent in your district, region, country. So just to move forward, the outcomes of the discussions can serve as a starting point, as we said, for your national parliaments, but also fostering regional cooperation, regional parliamentary diplomacy, that regional parliamentary cooperation, and also contribute to international efforts that FAO is leading these recent years. As my colleague Jan Lonar, who was the moderator yesterday, mentioned, we are looking ahead for the third Parliamentary Global Summit against hunger and malnutrition. And the debates that we are having here in Tirana will serve to inform and shape many of the themes and topics that will be discussed, hopefully in Africa, no later than 2026. So without further ado, I will begin to hearing from each breakout facilitators who are with me here in the front of the plenary. Each facilitator will have 10 minutes to present the main findings, following by brief plenary discussions where you will be able to intervene. So I encourage to everyone to engage on the topics presented by our colleagues here, as your contributions will support FAO to continue technically supporting you in the upcoming years. So allow me to introduce my colleague Oksana, who will provide a summary of the session of climate change. So please, Oksana, you have 10 minutes, and please provide all the key findings of the debates you had yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. Good morning, everyone. We had plenty of interesting insights, but I'll be obviously focusing only on the most significant ones, those that were recurring across all the groups, the discussion groups. So to begin with, balancing climate and environmental goals with the need to focus on agricultural productivity emerged as a critical point during all the discussions in all groups. Specifically, participants emphasized that while achieving sustainability targets is undoubtedly essential, it shall not compromise the food security. Some participants also raised concerns regarding the centralized approach in EU policymaking, noting that national parliaments often have limited involvement in shaping agricultural policies, which may result in regulations that do not fully consider the specific and unique circumstances in specific member states, individual member states. And some participants also suggested that the solution to that would be to establish tailored goals that take into account the local conditions as well as the needs and interests of farmers, first of all, which naturally leads me to the next point, which is on the role of farmers and the importance of adopting a participatory approach to that actively involves farmers in policymaking process. As insights of those who are engaged in food production and farmers specifically are invaluable for creating policies that align with the climate goals on one side, but also address the particular needs of farmers in those countries. And such public consultations would facilitate a better understanding of the challenges that farmers are encountering in those countries, and also inform more productive, more effective, feasible, but also inclusive policies and solutions, and also facilitate the uptake of the policies and solutions by farmers on the ground. So, speaking about the challenges, we need to be aware that introducing new environmental regulations adds extra burden on farmers. Therefore, these additional regulations shall come with additional support from you and from us as well, of course. Several concerns were also expressed regarding carbon leakage, where EU policies may disadvantage local farmers and make it difficult for them to compete. This situation creates uneven conditions for farmers when imports from countries with less stringent environmental regulations may create conditions that are not favorable for local farmers. And in this regards, participants emphasize the need to address the issue through advocacy and constructive discussions to make sure that competition in the sector is fair. Finally, the necessity of support from international organizations, including FAO, was also recurring throughout all the discussions. Participants called for support in advocacy against carbon leakage. They also asked for support in sharing the knowledge and providing a platform for knowledge exchange, particularly between EU and non-EU countries. I would also mention that we see the need that for EU non-EU countries also to receive support and to learn from EU countries and learn from the best examples from EU member states. That will be it from me. Thank you.
Much appreciate, Oksana. That's a really insightful overview. The need for more advocate for climate change. It has been repeated among the participants, and also the need for develop regulations regarding climate resilience, not just to farmers, but also to the entire food system. So I would like to invite now to Pedro Arias to share his conclusions about the session on right to food. So Pedro, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning, and thank you, Victor. Yes, let me feedback on the group where we looked at discussions we had on the right to food and the role that parliamentarians could have in its realization. The right to food, a fundamental human right. In our conversations, we together highlighted the various challenges and opportunities that are faced by countries in understanding and implementing this fundamental human right, the right to food, right to adequate food. All 4 sessions began with a focus on how parliamentarians engage with this very concept of the right to food. And we reminded ourselves also of the voluntary guidelines of the Committee on World Food Security on the right to adequate food in the context of national food security. On the progressive realization of the right to food, progressive realization, that's how it goes, of the right to food in the context of national food security. We heard that in many countries, the right to food at parliamentary level has to compete with other priorities in their debates. For example, in Belgium, we see a strong focus on environmental issues. Equally so in Italy, we heard concerns of the shift in European Union policy towards environmental protection and the implications that this would have for farmers, for producers. These 2 examples raise the broader question of how to balance issues like, for example, environmental sustainability with the right to food. Moldova also provided an interesting example where parliamentarians' work on food waste law received little attention due to its low political visibility. Despite the interest from parliamentarians to put this legislation on food waste, there were other debates in the agenda, which made it very difficult then to enact legislation in this direction. Indeed, Moldova and Kazakhstan are 2 interesting examples. They actually participated actively during the discussions because both have implicitly or explicitly the right to food in their constitutions. It's there, the right to food is there. The problem, as Moldova explained, that this is just the beginning. How do you then enact legislation that goes further into the fulfillment? We talk about this, how do you actually say in the realization of this fundamental human right, the realization, which is to protect, to respect, and to fulfill the right to adequate food. As the discussions progressed, we saw a call for FAO to take a more active role in supporting countries to inform about the right to food and the voluntary guidelines, because the voluntary guidelines at the end of the day, what are but a list of recommendations that countries should take towards the progressive realization of the right to food. It's nothing but that. It's very interesting, and we encourage all members of parliament to read them, because it has very concrete and practical guidelines on how to as I say, land this plane, which is the right to food at national level. Participants from Belgium, Kazakhstan, and Moldova echoed, actually those who were more active during the discussions, they themselves echoed and supported a stronger engagement of the FAO for understanding the guidelines on the right to food, which this year actually have the 20th anniversary, 20 years. And Victor was reminding me that this afternoon at the CFS, there is going to be a special event celebrating 20 years of the right to food guidelines, which is exactly the conversation that we had yesterday. That very same conversation is happening this afternoon in the FAO headquarters under the Committee on World Food Security. Fair is to say that most parliamentarians had limited familiarity with the voluntary guidelines of the CFS and emphasizing the need for greater awareness and advocacy. As entry points, it's interesting, Cyprus made a link between how do we engage on the right to food. He says, well, we know we have the SDG 2, zero hunger. Can we use that as an entry point then to address the issue of the right to food? I explained to you yesterday, and I'll repeat this here again, that this is not the case in Latin America. In Latin America, the right to food and what they call soberanía alimentaria, food sovereignty, is very strong among parliamentarians. They have a parliamentary front against hunger and malnutrition. Victor is very active on that. And we actually met 10 years ago under that context for the first time. The Parliamentary Front Against Hunger and Malnutrition, where they actually produced a model law that can be adapted to national context for the realization of the right to food based on the FAO guidelines. We would be happy to share those guidelines with you if you're interested in seeing how other regions of the world are actually moving forward. So takeaway from the discussions, the main takeaway is that the right to food remains an under-discussed issue in many parliaments, despite the existence of 2 decades of the voluntary guidelines that could help governments to take action. FAO's role in supporting this process, whether through technical assistance, the facilitator of regular parliamentary engagement, or by connecting the right to food with broader sustainability goals like the SDG 2, could be important for driving the change that is needed to make this right a reality in all countries of Europe and Central Asia. Thank you for your contributions yesterday.
Thank you, Pedro, for this report. Yeah, I do agree with you on the challenges of grounding the voluntary guidelines into laws, policies, or even regulations. It's not easy. So far, there are 23 countries who have explicitly the right to food in the Constitution, other 41 or 42 implicitly in the Constitution. But it doesn't mean that the right to food is guaranteed. So this is where we could support you. We are celebrating now the 20 years of the guidelines on the right to food during these weeks in FAO. So how we move forward on bringing these guidelines into legislation is something that FAO can contribute to your parliament. So If you are interested, as many also show interest in yesterday, we are taking notes and happy to support you further. So let's continue with the next session on healthy diets. Mary, could you please present the outcomes of your group discussions?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Victor, and good morning, everybody. Indeed, we had good discussions in the 4 working groups on the breakout group on policy reform and approaches for access to healthy and sustainable diets. Across the 4 groups, there were a number of some common points popping up. So we have summarized those, and thank you all, into 5 core points. And thank you all for the very rich contributions and good discussions. On the first point, one very clear point that was coming out from the discussions was when we talk about ensuring that consumers have access to healthy and sustainable diets, many participants went education as one of the key, let's say, foundational or key points, and starting from a young age, starting with children and with young adults, to instill, I guess, an understanding of where food comes from, but also what makes up how our food choices can ensure we have a healthy diet, and then also looking at issues related to climate as well, and indeed even practices to prevent food waste. So education from an early age was a key point. And in this context, participants shared from many of your countries examples of how you are also providing school meals through the school environment. And some countries noted then that by providing school meals, this is also, there are different policies in place to encourage to provide a market for short supply chains, so that the school meal public procurement is putting in quotas or rules of how many ingredients are supplied from local and small producers in the catchment area of the schools. And this really enables to provide a market for producers, for products from small producers, promoting short value chains. And indeed, one participant noted that there is a requirement in the schools in their country, and it was Luxembourg, that 20% of the foods should come from local producers or be produced organically or biologically. Indeed, in the context of education, the importance and the different initiatives on food labeling were also highlighted as an important mechanism for informing consumers about the food they're buying, but also how to make healthier food choices. And one participant also noted the importance of, there was a discussion around what foods are available for children or young teenagers to buy in schools, and they had brought in a rule that there would be no vending machines allowed in the school. So this is looking at the environment of where the children are in the school. This was the first, let's say, rich discussion. Then the discussion, we were also talking about healthy diets in the context, obviously, of the linkage to farmers producing food and to agriculture and food production. And another point that was talked around by a number of different participants was the focus now on finding the right approach to produce more with less is important. And let me explain this a little bit. On the one hand, and a bit similar to what Oksana was saying, there was clear agreement that we do need to take action, for example, to use to improve the quality and safety of food and protect environment, such as using less agrochemicals. But indeed, a number of different parliamentarians said we have a challenge here, that we have less yield or less production. And we also have an increasing population, or we need to continue to secure our food supplies. In this context, participants discussed the need for also looking at how we are producing food, indeed looking at potential different technological approaches or precision agriculture, and looking at different innovations for modern and green production techniques. Linked to that, a need for investment in science and research for climate smart approaches and technologies, and then how these technologies are, how farmers and food processors are then supported to use different technologies or approaches. Linked to this discussion around how we're producing food and good quality food supply, a number of participants also explained initiatives in your countries to produce food organically, and with some of you showing policies to increase, in fact, the amount of yield and products which are grown and produced according to organic certification. Others were also saying that, okay, while organic is all good, we do have an issue when we think of consumers in different social income brackets, that organically produced food is usually more expensive. So again, it's balancing these different approaches, I guess, and also what works for the food system and the food production, but also looking at access to the balanced diet. The third point, there is a need to level the playing field. This was raised by a number of different participants in the groups, and what was meant here, and the essence of the discussion, was that on one hand, in many countries, farmers and food producers are required to reduce chemicals or agrochemical use in order to improve the quality and safety of food. They're required now to invest in climate smart technologies for higher quality, for a safer environment. But in many cases, food imported into countries is often cheaper due to different requirements, including also different requirements around animal welfare. Working conditions or wages of different workers in different regions can be also less. So this is the discussion that took place around the challenges then that can cause to farmers and food producers in your countries. It was highlighted that as trading blocs negotiate new agreements, maybe around food trade, maybe these issues need to be more considered. One other point related to close to food production was also the comment that we are asking our farmers now, or you are asking your farmers to meet many standards related to food safety, nutrition content, but also the climate mitigation. But then there was an opinion that often the middle part of the food processing chain is not subject to so many requirements, and so you get good quality products from the farm level, but then maybe in the middle part of our food processing we are having more ultra processed foods, high salt and sugar. So again, highlighting the importance of a systemic approach to agri-food value chains. Point 4 was linked to the importance of context-specific policy measures, recognizing that different consumers and different socioeconomic groups need different measures to help them access the food they need and the balanced diet they need. One example is that middle income or growing middle income consumers in your countries may be overeating and maybe having issues with obesity, while people in poverty usually can only afford foods low in nutrient quality. Therefore, there may be need for some social protection measures or different measures or linked to food pricing as well. And one participant said that the gap between poorer and richer consumers is still growing in their country, and this seemed to resonate with other participants as well. On the final point to capture from your discussions, there were a number of different points raised about the importance of cross-sectoral discussions when we talk about linking food production and our healthy diets. You noted that many of the healthy diet discussions are under the health committees, and it was recognized that there could be space for more discussion between the health and agriculture committees on these cross-cutting issues. You also gave examples of how you are talking directly with farmers and food producers and often bringing them into your parliaments so that the context and the reality on the ground is considered in policy discussions and legal frameworks. Thank you very much, Victor. And thank you all for the input received. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary, for that thoughtful presentation. I see that you addressed many topics during the debates with the honorable members of parliament. In a context where sometimes hunger is not the issue, it's just a double burden of malnutrition, how to maybe deal with hunger and obesity at the same time, and how to make consumers, even children, to make healthier decisions. So that's why education is a point that I heard many times, not just in the plenary, also in the debates on the breakout sessions. And there are many good experiences regarding school gardens, and not only help to shorten the chain and make provide food for the schools, but also to help the process of education in the students. Also, the access to information, the labeling, these aspects are being addressed for many countries and also with many parliamentarians what we use to work in Latin American region, and so on. So there are many elements to be discussed there, and thank you very much for your presentation. So let's move now to the last but not least topic on digitalization. I would like to invite Daniela to share the summary of the session. So Daniela, you have 10 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Victor. It's my pleasure to be debriefing now from yesterday's very productive discussion with the colleagues. So as we have heard really throughout all the breakout sessions, innovating and digitalizing agriculture is just a present necessity. And the choice before parliamentarians and policymakers is clear. Either we act now to create policies that are positively harnessing this transformation, or we just risk to deepen the digital divide, especially in rural areas. Yet, this path does not come without challenges. A shared challenge that emerged from yesterday's discussion is the aging of the farming population, and so the knowledge gap in adopting new technologies and innovative practices. So the time between an innovation and a technology is identified, and when a policy instrument can be developed to support it, can be lengthy. And some countries are taking steps to engage younger farmers in agriculture and provide them with necessary skills and incentives. So reskilling programs, but also the provision of timely advisory services, especially via digital means, are also critical to bridge this gap. But the policy toolbox for fostering digitalization and innovation in agriculture can also include additional measures, such as the provision of digital public services, especially to ease administrative burdens or to compensate for the shortage of agricultural extension agents. So, for example, Albania's eAlbania and Italy's Land Bank portal are good practices in this area. However, These services must be designed with the needs and the abilities of farmers, all farmers, also the smaller farmers, in mind. The example of the newly introduced digital notebooks under the EU CAP provisions highlight the importance of carefully designed tools to be of easy to use for farmers. Otherwise, they might unintentionally create additional challenges instead of simplifying processes. Also, in some countries, smartphone penetration and rural connectivity remain key barriers to digitalization. So continuous investments in the ICT infrastructure is essential precondition to ensure equitable access to digital technologies, as highlighted in the Kazakhstan efforts to extend connectivity even to the most remote rural areas. Affordability is another concern. For a just and inclusive green transition, smallholder farmers need access to smart farming tools, precision agriculture, climate smart technologies. We need to produce more with less, as we just said. Yet, as Croatia pointed out, even when financial support is available, farmers may not adopt new technologies due to even resistance to change. So anyway, despite these challenges, digital tools can also benefit farmers indirectly. We heard about e-registries, food traceability systems from farm to fork, data platform based on satellite data together, soil data, crop data, and all these tools, as seen in Albania, in Kazakhstan, are helping governments collecting data, which in turn can be used to inform better policy decisions. So as we faced several shared challenges, climate change, aging farming populations, land abandonment, collaboration between policymakers and stakeholders to innovate and digitalize agriculture is just crucial. And this includes partnerships with research institutions, academia, civil society, innovation hubs, and of course, the private sector. And last but not least, international cooperation and the exchange of best practices among countries will be key to ensuring sustainable and inclusive digital future for agriculture. I thank you again for yesterday's discussion, and floor is back to you, Victor.
Thank you a lot, Daniela, for that excellent breakdown. With all these summaries in mind, now I would like to open the floor for your comments and questions. If anyone has any doubts or any thought that of what we have been discussed, now it's the perfect time to share. So maybe something that was missed by our colleagues, or maybe that you want to add that after your reflection, you would like to include in this report summaries of each session, please feel free to raise your hand and intervene as you deem appropriate. Any comments? No? España. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Victor. I would like to refer about because yesterday we have a very good debate, I would like to refer about the new breeding technology because in Europe we are lack in that dossier because actually we cannot use the new breeding technology like mutagenesis, genesis, CRISPR-Cas, and this dossier is stopped by European Commission. But however, our competitors in many other places in the world can use this technology, and this is very relevant because if we have to continue producing in farmer, but most of the farmers told us that we have a increasing climate change. We have less tools, we have less land for use, and we have to increase our yields. This technology, a possibility to increase our yields, and especially to using the erosion soils, also with salted soil, more salted soil, and especially with the drop that we have a very special drop condition in the southern countries, countries of Europe. So we demand that this new technology could use as soon as possible for the farmers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Spain, for your comments. Anyone else, maybe in a non-EU country that would like to intervene on the same topic?
Sure, let me quickly react to Spain. And indeed, as mentioned also in some of the breakout sessions, the just green transition comes at a cost. And who needs to bear this cost? The technologies you mentioned, the precision agriculture, the climate smart agriculture, that are just essential to produce more with less, come, of course, at some high cost, because there is an important hardware component in them. So who needs to bear the cost? And even when the technologies can be made available to farmers, are we then able to give them the right skills and to build that needed change in mindsets, to change mindsets so that they will really adopt them in a way that really can ease their work and not create an additional burden? Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you, Daniela. Italy, please.
Yep, thank you very much. I agree what the Spain colleague said. The Italian has improved the research about the new breeding technology, has shown to the Europe that it's possible to do it. This means that we can use same plants without less amount of water, less amount of agri-chemicals, less amount on everything is heavily concerning the environment. So what we ask you to take into consideration is that to press European community, but not only, the entire world opinion, because this is the way we should undertake to fulfill the next big challenges we have in agriculture. We have not only to produce more with less, we have to produce more and better. That's the great challenge we have. And to produce better, we have to have the instruments to do it. We can't do agriculture as we did 100 years ago. This is nothing to do with environment. This is something to do with ideological, radical views which are destroying agriculture and does not permit to the people to have food for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Italy. Please, Honorable from Croatia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just want to repeat that Croatia is GMO-free country and that we adopted the declaration about establishing GMO-free Alpe-Adriatic-Danube region, and receive support of most of the countries in this region for that idea, because we think that Europe needs to be GMO-free, that we need to produce quality food to support our farmers, especially small farmers, to continue their production, because they protect biological diversity, they protect rural area, and they protect our European values. That is important, that they have all conditions for continued production and life in rural area. That is why we consider a new genome techniques directive very problematic, and we built coalition with other European countries to stop this directive, because also European Court of Justice confirmed that new genome techniques are GMO exactly, and we don't want GMO in Europe. We think that the question of hunger is not question of food, it's question of politics. So we need to have balanced politics, which will stop food waste and make realistic and fair distribution of food. Also, we need to take in consideration when Europe negotiate about new trade agreements, that farmers in third countries need to fulfill requests which need to fulfill also European farmers, because in other cases we have unfair competition and we cannot handle with this. On the European level, I think that first step needs to be honest dialogue and conversation with farmers, because farmers are in front of very huge administration requests. They have really huge green ambition in front themselves, and they have less money for fulfill all of this. So first step of European Commission need to be to open eyes and ears and to hear what farmers need to continue produce food for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Croatia. Ireland asked for the floor, so please.
Very briefly to speak in support of my colleagues from Spain and Italy. I too am a very firm believer of, in particular, as mentioned by Spain, CRISPR. This is not GMO, it's a gene improvement. And we now have varieties of crops which we traditionally grew in one condition, which we're continuing to try to grow in drought and in indeed flood scenarios. The crop needs to be developed to meet the demands placed on it by the climate change. And as I said, this is not GMO, this is CRISPR, this is gene modification and improvement. And I support my two colleagues.
Thank you very much. Portugal, please.
Good morning, everyone. I speak because I agree with Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Ireland now. We can not make confusion between OGM and the genomic research. Is another thing. Is very, very important for the resilience of the products of agriculture. If you want best practices, less agrochemicals, we must have crops more resistant to the climate change and everything. So genomic research is very important for Portugal. I hope in the European Union we bring a directive with this, because in these times we live, not so rarely we have a lot of confusion between concepts and the things, they are very different. So genomic is very important for the future of a safe and more productive agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Portugal. Italy first, and then Spain.
Grazie Presidente. Volevo anch'io rassicurare, diciamo, la collega croata e intanto specificare il fatto che l'Italia è stato il primo paese in Europa che ha introdotto un divieto disciplinato dalla normativa interna già nel 2004 circa il divieto e l'introduzione di coltivazioni a base di sementi OGM.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to reassure my peer from Croatia. Italy was the first country in Europe to introduce a national ban on OGM in 2004.
Le tecniche di evoluzione assistita, la scienza sottolinea, sono tecniche di correzione genetica senza inserimento di materiale esterno, differente quindi dagli organismi geneticamente modificati, con l'obiettivo di rendere una coltivazione più resiliente ai cambiamenti climatici. Ed è questo il problema, Presidente e cari colleghi. Noi in Europa abbiamo a che fare purtroppo con cambiamenti climatici che hanno messo a dura prova le nostre cultivar.
Assisted evolution techniques and science are actually something different from other forms of OGMs. They do not contemplate external substances. This way, our crops might become more resilient to climate change. This is the point that I wanted to raise. Dear Mr. President, dear colleagues, we in Europe have to deal with unprecedented climate change, which is straining our crops.
Pertanto concludo facendo questa riflessione, Presidente. Se noi dovessimo continuare con questa inutile polemica, non faremmo altro che gettare nel più completo disorientamento i nostri consumatori e anche i nostri imprenditori agricoli. Grazie.
Therefore, let me get to the point. If we go on with this useless controversy, we can only create confusion in consumers and farmers.
Grazie mille, Honorable from Italy. Spain has asked the floor. Adelante.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, I would like to show my disagreement with the position of my Italian colleague, because I consider that this discourse that environmental sustainability and agricultural production are incompatible seems erroneous to me. If there is not environmental sustainability, agricultural production will be bread for today and hunger for tomorrow, as we say in Spanish. It's not an ideological issue, it's an issue of guaranteeing the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spain. Please, any other country that would like to join the discussion? No? So far, no? Okay, so if there are no more interventions, I'm pretty sure that our colleagues here took note of what has been discussed. And we are going to include it in the final report of the sessions and also in the final report of the summit itself. So thank you very much for your insights, comments, and debates. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our interactive panel discussion. Yeah. Titled Fostering an Able Environment for Responsible Investment in Agriculture, moderated by my colleague Pedro Arias. If I may, Pedro and I go back several years ago when he trained me on this specific topic when I used to be a young parliamentary advisor in the Chilean Senate. So his deep expertise on how parliamentarians can be agents of change to shape transparent and effective environment for responsible investments will bring valuable insights to today's conversation. So Pedro, if you could take the podium and invite our experts and MPs. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Yes, that was 10 years ago, but I think this is the case of where the student has certainly gone past the teacher. Could I invite to the podium Mr. Arben Pelumbi, Chairperson of the Committee on Manufacturing, Trade and Environment of the Parliament of Albania, Ms. Fiona McClooney, UN Resident Coordinator. No, sorry. Sorry. I'm looking at the wrong. Yeah, no, Vahi. No, sorry. Yeah. Sorry for the confusion. No, we have here the panelists are Alexander Trubuka, Chair of the Agriculture and Food Industry Committee of Moldova. Sorry about this. Mr. Vahe Galumian, Chair of the Standing Committee on Territorial Administration and Local Self-Government, Agriculture and Environment Protection of Armenia. And Ms. Matsuma, Deputy Vice Chairman of Standing Committee of Agrarian Issues, Land and Water Resources of Tajikistan. Please come to the podium. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start by me giving an introduction to the responsible investment in agriculture according to the Committee on World Food Security. I have a very short presentations. I don't like PowerPoint presentations, but I think in this case, it may be helpful for all of us. So I'm going to go down there to handle the. So, the principles for responsible investment in agriculture and food systems. 20 years ago, we had the right to food. 20 years ago, we had the right to food. 10 years ago, we had the principles for responsible investment in agriculture. And there is two reasons why they have these principles. The first one is because if you remember 2007, 2008, there was a food price crisis. There was a financial crisis, and there were many speculators went into the commodity markets, and the prices of commodities went through the roof. And there was a food price crisis at the time. And investors then saw in agriculture, for the first time perhaps in many decades, an opportunity to invest. agriculture was business. And therefore, the FAO looked with a little bit of reluctance, said, well, this is very good news, but on the other hand, where you don't have secure tenure rights, this is an opportunity for land grabs. And therefore, the FAO started to work first with the World Bank, the IFAD, and other institutions, and developed the first approximation to what was called the Principles for Responsible Agricultural Investment. PRAI used to be called PRAI. It was a set of principles that protected rights. But of course, then the Committee on World Food Security said, well, you know, you cannot just get together and come up with principles. We want a participatory process. We want to bring in the civil society. We want governments to have an open discussion about what is a responsible investment in agriculture. And the Committee on World Food Security then started a process to develop this principle for responsible investments in agriculture and food systems, because at the time, also about 15 years ago, there was this recognition that food and agriculture needed to take into consideration not just agriculture, but the larger food systems. And today, in fact, we talk about sustainable agri-food systems, because it's not even about food systems, it's agri-food systems, because agriculture produces some non-food items. So there is a historic precedence to this. There is a sort of a rationale of why we got into these responsible investments in agriculture. And there is also the need, there was also the need at the time to say, if we want to land this airplane of the right to food, where do we invest? And where do we invest in a manner that contributes to the progressive realization of the right to food? So 20 years, 10 years later, we have these principles that would guarantee that investment in agriculture and food systems, where we've got agri-food systems now, are responsible. I have only 3 slides. I don't like PowerPoint presentations. They say that PowerPoints have no power and no point to make. So this is why I don't like it. So yeah, I will stick to the bare minimum. And so there we go. Endorsed by the World Food Security 10 years ago, 2014, 10 years now, and to promote investments that contribute. Here we go, about what we talked yesterday, contribute to the progressive realization of the right to food in the context of national food security, then addressed at the time existing challenges. And the existing challenge at that time was the land grabs. Everybody was worried about this, right? And what it does, it promotes, is basically what they say is, okay, we want to achieve certain outcomes that are beneficial to the progressive realization of the right to food. But there is also a way of doing this. It's not that you just go out and invest in agriculture. There is also a way of doing it that is participatory, that is inclusive, that in the context of today's SDG, leave no one behind, basically. So it's inclusive. You have to bring people in to participate and so on. There is the principles have this component as well. And among other things, then it promotes partnerships with international organizations like the FAO, the World Bank, and IFAD to promote its implementation. Now, these are the principles. This is the only chart that we'll come back to it, and probably we'll leave this on the screen as we continue with these discussions, because these are the 10 principles. And this comes from a publication actually produced by Victor's team and colleagues, that is a 140-page, I think, document, which actually gives the detailed analysis of how to invest responsibly in agriculture and food systems, and with examples as well. So let's read them just one by one quickly so that we have an idea of what they are. Contributes to food security and nutrition. Investments in agriculture and food systems, they contribute to food security and nutrition. They contribute to sustainable and inclusive economic development and eradication of poverty. In the language of those days, it was inclusive and economic development. It's probably now what we call leave no one behind, which is very much in the parlance, in the rhetoric, in the narrative of today's development agenda. That foster gender equality and women's empowerment. And I would put it together with the next one, which is the fourth one, which engage and empower the youth. And this is where we say that responsible investment in agriculture are not only about achieving certain objectives, but actually to bringing people in on this process to participate. We see that the number 9 is also part of this equation. That respects tenure of land, fisheries, and forests, and access to water. This issue of tenure at the time was very, very important because 2 years earlier, in 2012, the Committee on World Food Security also developed what's called the VGGT, the Voluntary Guidance for the responsible, is a very long name. I'll try to read it properly because it's important. Voluntary guidelines on responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests in the context of national food security. Now, if you notice this, in the context of national food security, always is also in the guidelines of the right to food. And why is it there? Why is it there? It's because food security is a very technically precise, elaborated terminology. Oh, sorry. It's a very precise terminology that explains that if you want to move in this direction, the way to do it is on the basis of 4 pillars, which is food availability. The food has to be there. Food access. People have to have the opportunity, either the physical access or the financial access of this food, have to be able to acquire the food. That food has to be stable. There has to be stability throughout the years on this food. And that this food, of course, you can use this food. That is nutritious, doesn't have contaminants. We have American here on the issue of food safety. Food safety is very important. So all these 4 pillars give, if you wish, this concept of the right to food and so on, a solid technical foundation, which is both in the right to food and in the voluntary guidelines for the responsible governance of tenure. Tenure that is, it doesn't matter whether you own the land or not. What really matters here is that those who occupy it have the right to produce the feed or feed themselves, or that's the tenure issue. Again, very technical terminology that helps to explain or to land these abstract conflicts that are somewhere there in the cloud down to earth, yeah, and to transform them into actual policy. So that's number 5. Another interesting aspect of this principle number 5 is that as it takes you to the voluntary guidelines, it starts to wave a network of all these voluntary guidance, which are instruments, which are normative instruments, normative documents that the Committee on World Food Security, the governments, have agreed together that lay the foundations of how things should be done. They are voluntary guidelines. If it's voluntary, then it's up to the government to adopt them. They're voluntary guidelines, but they connect to each other. If you read the Responsible Investment in Agriculture 5, which is about respecting tenure of land, fisheries, and forests, it says, I have nothing to say here. go to number 5. Go and look at the voluntary guidelines. And one very interesting aspect of these voluntary guidelines is that on the tenure is that in the chapter 12, it defines responsible investment in a manner that is different here. It says, does no harm. Responsible investment is do no harm. Whatever you do, do no harm, which is nowhere else. It's not in this responsible investment in agriculture. So you're going to invest on environmental protection, do it, but do no harm to small farmers. Yeah, you're going to be doing technology development. Well, do no harm to the environment, or do no harm to to the markets. Don't allow market concentration through these big multinational companies have all the muscle and power to develop this technology, and then they sell farmers these packages where you have to, use that particular pesticide, or we know all the issues related to how some of the big multinational companies, the strategies that they use to recoup on that huge investment that is required to produce this very powerful technology. So it's very interesting because the do no harm is there as well. So then we have other ones which are, they make sense. They are there, conserve and sustainably manage natural resources, increase resilience and reduce disaster risk, respect the cultural heritage and traditional knowledge, and support diversity and innovation, promote safe and healthy agriculture and food systems. Yet again, today we would say agri-food systems. Yeah, it is agriculture and food system. Yeah, that was the narrative at the time. This is where I was telling you about. It's not just what you want to do, but how you do it that matters. According to me, it has to be inclusive and transparent governance structures, processes, and grievance mechanisms. They have to be embedded in these investments that you do. And to access and address the impacts and promote accountability. This is the last one, which says basically, yeah, there is a need for accountability here if you want to be responsible. The last one, which is very, very quick to show you that this is not an investment that governments need to do. These responsible investments in agriculture, these principles are a call for everyone. States, intergovernmental organizations, financial institutions, donors, smallholders and their organizations, everyone. Unfortunately, the CSOs at the time, the civil society organizations of the Committee on World Food Security that participated in this process did not sign to it, did not endorse it. They were not happy because they thought, their opinion was that that the big corporations were behind these principles, and they decided not to join. That's an overview of the CSS, right? Let's see if I can move back one, because I want to keep, if possible, there. Would like to keep that on the screen for us to remind ourselves of what these principles for responsible investment are. Now we're going to continue here with a couple of presentations from colleagues who have ventured to speak about this issue, and which I hope, yes, that will shed some light into how this goes in practice. Thank you very much. Right. Thank you. Yes, so Mr. Halumian from Armenia, Chair of the Standing Committee on Territorial Administration, Local Self-Governance, Agriculture and Environmental Protection. You have the floor.
Спасибо большое. Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Уважаемые коллеги из парламентов.
Hello, dear colleagues from the parliaments, and
I would like, first of all, to extend my gratitude for this high-level meeting and the opportunity to meet my peers, our colleagues. And of course, the topics that have been discussed yesterday and today are very important for us. And the close cooperation is necessary here, how to address these challenges. But there are some challenges that are very specific for our country. For instance, in Armenia, after disintegration of the Soviet Union, we practically had no logistical infrastructure. All people who want to invest into agriculture, first and foremost, they think not how to grow some crops, but how to deliver these products to the customers. And our government of Armenia has made a very important step towards tackling these logistical challenges. We have informed all our neighbors about this project of crosswords of world, and we do hope that we will live friendly with our neighbors, and we do hope that these logistical challenges will be resolved. And the Parliament of Armenia works hard to facilitate investments into the country. And in 2018, the government set up a unified single window for investors. And this structure is under the auspices of the Ministry of Economy. And it turned out to be a very important step because it has significantly affected the behavior of investors. This is exactly what investors needed in our country. And the minister meets with investors on a monthly basis and listens to their problems and challenges. And we have the Parliament of Armenia always supports the government of the country in their endeavors, and we try to resolve all the problems that the government faces in this area. And frankly speaking, that's all that I wanted to say. If you have any questions, I would be very happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Garuyan, Chair of the Standing Committee on Territorial Administration. Indeed, Armenia is also a landlocked country, and many of the issues that you were referring to now resonate with a conference that we had only a month ago in Uzbekistan, where landlocked developing countries gathered to address the complexities of having to depend on your neighbor. In the case of Uzbekistan, is even worse because they are double locked in. They are surrounded by landlocked countries themselves. So what they do and how they trade with their neighbors, has to be just an intermediate step to take that produce even further when you do transportation of produce across the border. So all this issue of logistics, extremely complex, geopolitics, extremely complex also, cross-country interdependencies. This came very, very strongly, and not only in issues related to trade, but also in issues related to the joint management of resources, water in particular, and waterways across the country. Attracting foreign investment, as you rightly say, in those circumstances is extremely difficult. How do you attract foreign investment that is desperately needed to do not just more investment in agriculture, but also responsible investment, more and better investment in agriculture? So we can understand the relevance of your ideas. So yeah, how to grow is one thing, but how to deliver, as you said, how to deliver, how to trade this produce. You wanted to add something in particular, or we move to the next speaker?
Ну, в первую очередь, самое значимое.
And first of all, the most important step that has been done is that we have removed an income tax in agriculture. Agricultural sector doesn't pay profit tax, and the farms which are located in the remote areas also do not pay tax on land, and all the farmers who invested into agriculture, they admit that it was a very important step. And as far as the border with our neighbors, I would, and this is related to logistics, and such a small country as Armenia has regions which grow certain crops specific, but there are regions which do not have any revenues at all. But our food independence is very important for us, and the state is obliged to subsidize this region, so if we want to be independent. But we need to mitigate these problems and these logistical problems that our country faces.
It's on. Yes, thank you. Sorry, apologies for the technology, but I am a dinosaur in technology as well. So, yes, support. We can get into the issue of food self-sufficiency, food sovereignty in the language of Latin Americans. What in the FAO we would refer to as food self-reliance, which is something different from food self-sufficiency and food sovereignty, which allows for trade to be part of that equation. Very interesting discussion. We can go in that direction, but I think at this stage, and if you allow me, I would like to invite the next speaker to make a contribution.
С удовольствием.
We can always come back to you. And I'm sure there will be questions. So the next is Mr. Alexander Trubka. Am I saying this properly? Yes, we had very interesting conversations on the right to food, where you mentioned already the fact that it's in the Moldovan constitution. So yes, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arias. Yeah, probably I will talk from the perspective of some developing countries because it's relevant, and plus when we discuss about responsible investments in agri-food sector, generally developing countries has have faced much more problems and much more challenges than developed already countries. So first of all, I will divide two types of investments. There are internal investments and foreign investments, because they face different problems, namely in Moldova. Generally, I will divide also types of the problems in few directions. First of all, administrative problems, it's bureaucracy, corruption, and economical problems. It's high interest rates and short money. And if we discuss about the economical problems, most of the local investors face namely this problem, because in Moldova, being a developing country, we we have pretty high inflation rate compared with European Union countries. For instance, when in Europe, average inflation, the highest level was about 7, maximum 9%. In Moldova, it was about 34%. And of course, the interest rates are very high, and these diminish the capacity of the investors to attract money for investments. Also, another economic problem is related to the short money, because at the same time, for instance, in European Union, the average credit for investments it's more than 15 years, it's 20 years, 25 years. In Moldova, the maximum period of investment credit for agriculture is about 5, maximum 7 years. And of course, this make the investments less competitive with European companies. And based on the fact that for Moldavians farmers, for Moldavians agricultures and agri-food sector generally, the main market for us is European Union. Of course, there create problems for local farmers to compete with European companies. So therefore, if discussed from the perspective of investment generally in agri-food sector, for local farmers, the main problem is related to economical issues. Plus, if discussed specifically about the responsible investments, of course, we have the problem of the cost. Because in the society, the understanding of the need of responsible investments is a lower level, and the people usually focus, first of all, on the price of the product. So then when they see on the shelves on the market, the two different products, one with 20% higher price only because the company which produced made a responsible investment, of course, they will not buy this product only because it's much more expensive. So this is also a problem. If discuss about the foreign investors, of course, they don't have the problem of the money in terms of cost of the money, because they can take credits from European markets. They have low interest rates, they have long money, but when they come in Moldova, because it's a developing country with a lot of the administrative and corruption problems historically, they face two main problems. First of all, it's the bureaucracy. And we try in the last years to diminish it, to digitalize the processes in order to somehow take off all the bureaucracy aspects, but still it's a problem. There are a lot of the layers of, let's say, decision bodies from the ministry, agencies, and the local level. So basically, any investment should pass through all these processes, and still is a problem. The other problem is the corruption. 5-10 years ago, it was a high-level corruption problem. Currently, it's a lower level, the high-level corruption, but still at the middle level and the local level, the corruption still exists, and it's a problem for the investors, which somehow make them to be less sure about their intention to invest in agri-food sector. If we talk about the second question or second approach about what Parliament should do, what Parliament do in this perspective, I'm a little bit confused, because generally Parliament should not be involved in those aspects, because it's like an interference in the other branch of the power. It's the executive power, and they should be responsible for the development of the investment attraction policies to implement those policies. However, Parliament is involved on the political level because Parliament is used like a lobby place for discussing with the ministries and agencies, especially when we discuss about big investments. I can give a specific example. In Moldova, we have a huge, probably the biggest in the region, pork farm. It's more than 2,000 heads of pigs per year. And they want to invest about $15–20 million in the new farm, and they need a road for this farm. And they cannot find a way to obtain the money from the local government, from the ministries, and then they come to the parliament in order to parliament to help them to lobby this idea in order to build from the public money the road, and they will make the investment. So the parliament is usually a place to discussion and should not be a place of solutions, because solutions should be in the government and they should be responsible for finding solutions and implement those solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. You touched on so many interesting things. I think that probably what you were referring to as economic problems perhaps would better be described as financial difficulties, only that are created with high interest rates. And of course, interest rates and corruption go hand in hand. Higher risk investors and banks in particular are not going to put the money and would charge a higher, is the protecting themselves. But you also say something that is really interesting to me, for me to hear, and I think we heard this also from the EU, and Moldova being a EU accession country. Hopefully, I don't know about the latest elections from a couple of days ago, but you're saying that responsible investment in agriculture is more expensive. And this is something that we heard also from the EU, and yeah, I mean the elephant in the room, that EU farmers complaining that EU in Moldova are producing to lower standards, and therefore, but this is the level playing field that I think was mentioned also before. Just if I can ask you for a very small reflection on that, why would you say that responsible investment in agriculture would end up with a product that is more expensive? Yeah, I just wanted to understand, perhaps if you could. Thank you.
When we discuss about the responsible investments, probably is the higher standards, the much more responsible from environmental issues, and of course there is infrastructure. And this infrastructure, for taking into account all the environmental issues, they cost money. It's economics, the basic economics, mathematics. If a normal investment is 100%, then a responsible investment is at least 5 to 10% above. And the company should decide from itself. They will take this money from their revenue or from their earnings and their profit margin, or they want to be responsible maybe to win the market by this approach. And of course, there could be a solution actually, but first of all, it's about the mindset of the society. If the society is ready to pay more only to get a product which is produced through the responsible process and responsible investment from the environmental issues and other issues, then it's easier for the company to sell this product. But as I said, in Moldova, namely, it's being let's say, maybe not poor, but middle country in terms of earnings, the people, from them, the price of the product, price quality, let's say, coefficient, it's much more important than some aspects related to what happens with the climate change. And of course, people who are responsible at the policy level development or research institution, they understand the impact of the climate change. But it's very complicated to explain to some guy from a village of 1,000 people who probably their level of education is maximum middle school, to explain about the climate change and the impact of the CO2 from the cow farm. From them, it's much more important that they have this cow meat at the affordable price. So I think if discuss the solutions, not about the problems only, so we have to work on the mindset of the society, to explain them the impact of the responsible investments. It's not only in terms of, how to say it, more expensive product, but it's a long-term impact. And basically, and the example which we have in Moldova is a drove. And because if 10 years ago, farmers never go to protest because they have enough incomes and enough quantity of product from their land. Currently, in the last 4 years, we had 3 years of drought, and now they currently understand the impact of climate change. And they are much more responsible in terms of investment. And they all think about to change and change their solutions, technical solutions from the conventional one to no-till and mini-till, for instance. But this also is a price they have to pay. And that currently they come to the government to say, okay, we are ready to make these investments. We understand that we need to have these investments because we see the drought last 3 years, but we don't have money for those investments. If they help us, we'll do this and we'll be very responsible. So this is actually, it's about the mindset, about the long-term education, and of course about the money and support from the government.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes, very interesting insights. My head is spinning because you brought in so many ideas in there. But before we go into the financing, basically you're asking the question is, where is the money to invest, right? Who is going to invest here? Is it going to be banks looking for a commercial profit? Is it going to be a government through donors? Is it going to be Bill Gates? Is it going to, where is the money? Who is willing to put money into us, you know, to lower that risk? Who is going to invest here in a responsible manner? Can we get somebody else who wants, he has a big heart and is going to bring, you know, that money from, we can go into that discussion. I think it's very interesting, especially in the context of probably of a market. Yeah, we go into that. Yes, very, very interesting discussion. Yeah. But before that, we'll go to the last presenter, which is Ms. Mavzuna, Deputy Vice Chairman of Standing Committee on Agrarian Issues, Land and Water Resources of Tajikistan, another landlocked country. You have the floor. Thank you.
Спасибо. Уважаемые представители парламентов, дамы и господа, прежде всего разрешите передать слово благодарности от имени парламента Республики Таджикистан, парламента Республики Албания, а также региональному офису ФАО за организацию этого важного мероприятия. Majlisi namoyandagon.
Anybody has interpretation? No?
Sorry. Sorry.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear? Dear representatives of the parliament, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me convey the words of gratitude on behalf of the Parliament of Tajikistan to the Parliament of Republic of Albania, as well as to the FAO Regional Office for organizing the important event. Parliament of the country is actively working to create conditions for attracting investments in agriculture and agri-food systems. And legislative initiatives in this area are supported, and they're promoted by the government of the Republic of Tajikistan, represented by the relevant ministries and departments, and by the deputies, by the MPs, in particular by representatives of our committee. Proposals of the sector actors on amendments and additions to the existing policy on food systems are also taken into account. And thus the parliament of the country is actively involved in the discussion and policy elaboration on investments for agriculture development, food safety, nutrition improvement, food industry development, transport and logistics and other related sector that aim to develop food systems. For example, in 2019-2023, the Republic of Tajikistan implemented the food safety program, and currently the government has prepared and approved a new program for the period of 2024 till 2028. The Parliament is also working to approve investment agreements taking into account preferences and benefits for investors, which shows the country's great interest in investment. Laws and other legal acts are adopted that stimulate the inflow of investments, both domestic and external, in particular tax legislation, investment legislation, and many others. We are actively working with our international partners, in particular with UN organizations, FAO, UN World Food Programme, and UNDP and others, and international financial institutions to find new solutions and opportunities to leverage knowledge, technology, and resources in support of the agri-food systems. We try to utilize all opportunities for the inflow of investments, which are very important for our country. We believe that such factors as geopolitical location, existing natural resources, human capital, active promotion of digital technologies and solutions, green transformation, sustainable position of the country on the global stage in promoting solutions to climate change, water resources, glaciers, support, and the intention of the government play an important role in promoting investments in our country. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Matsuna. Thank you. Apologies. I come from Latin America and I'm not familiar with Russian names. Just one question. You mentioned many areas where you would need investment on the management of natural resources, human resources, technology. Where would you say, what would be the priority in the context of Tajikistan, a country that is a least developed country, if I understand in the category? Tajikistan is probably the country in Central Asia with least development of the whole region. And you have the World Food Programme there working. You mentioned UNDP. You didn't mention FAO. That should be there. Where do we start? Where do you see investment starting this process of transformation, or not starting this process perhaps of ongoing processes of transformation that are happening in your country now? How do we prioritize? And from the point of view of the Parliament, what kind of debate could the Parliament promote to then set out a roadmap for investment?
Thank you. Yes. In our parliament, we have committees that work on these issues, the Standing Committee on Economy, and they discuss different provisions for investors, and they discuss what factors are the most beneficial and which are the most efficient. These are the sectors that work on this very important, in this very important areas.
Yes, thank you. So it's committees, where can the committees? So parliamentary committees that decide how to and where to prioritize investments, right?
The Committee for Economic.
This is the Standing Committee on Economy. It is responsible for these issues.
Thank you, Tajikistan. 3 landlocked countries here. I'm surrounded by landlocked countries. We only have 15 minutes to go. Many issues, some of them hairy, were raised. I wonder if anybody would like to discuss any of these. Otherwise, I would continue the conversation with Moldova about in finance, which is, where's the money? But please, if you would like to make a contribution to the debate on responsible investment, feel free to do so. Now, oh, sorry, yeah, IISD, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to briefly reflect on one important point that also the parliamentarians from Moldova mentioned, and that when we talk about this issue, it's often, we kind of centering on climate change, but it's really responsible investment. It's not just about climate change. And during the discussion, we already mentioned, that there is huge implication of how we manage water, but there's also issues, and then it comes to the technology aspect, how we apply fertilizer, how we apply pesticides, what pesticides we use, and this all comes in on costs, both the technology and the actual product that you use. The next part of this is then also, the implications of biodiversity, how you manage land, so you have biodiversity. Again, it has implication of how much you plant, how, but it also has implication for yield and the amount of production. And while in long term, you can keep your yields higher and you have more production, but in the short term, your production or amount of produce may go down slightly because you can't manage the land that extensively, you can't apply certain type of products and so on. So it's really much more complex, and the climate change kind of manifests it, because if there is an impact of climate change, it impacts everything. But there is many other aspects of it. And the other aspect of responsible investment, which we haven't touched, is the social aspects. So part of the responsible investment thinking, it's also fair wages, good employment conditions. In agriculture, we have a lot of seasonal and informal labor, like how this can be managed in a more responsible way. So that's why the package of responsible agriculture provides the long-term, more sustainable solution. But when you transition, you really need to think hard what you can afford, what are those building blocks that deliver change, but also you have the huge cost limitation and acceptance. What the expert from Moldova was basically saying, that people just don't want, they want the money now and the food now. So there is definitely a huge and a very challenging topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, yes. What you're saying is fundamentally true, but on the other hand, we speak of a transition as if there is actually somewhere to get to, right? And you say that, saying that life is what happens when we think about what it may be, what it may become, right? Everything is in transition, and climate change makes it very clear, and you need sustainable finance. You need actually to support this transition. There has to come from somewhere, these resources. And where is this, who is going to finance this transition, which is actually taking it to a situation which is not stable itself? It's probably a transition to a different state. And this is sort of the difficulty, yeah. So I wonder, in the case of Moldova, when you think about responsible investment in agriculture, and that they are going to be, there is someone at the end of the day who wants the payback, because this is a private investment that we're talking about, financed by financial institutions. But there are other options out there. For example, on blended finance, money that can come from the public sector to contribute and accompany the private sector, for example, by diminishing risk, the risk environment, yeah. Yeah, I don't know whether in Moldova you have actually explored this possibility.
Well, when it's discussing about the money, money do not come from nowhere. They come from the economy. It's like general rule. So if you want to support something, basically you have to take money from other sectors. This is general rule. And for instance, in EU, about 45, I believe, % of the EU budget is money for agriculture subsidies. In Moldova, it's about, let's say, in terms of budget is less than 4%. Because in EU, for instance, agriculture sector is about 4.5%, and only about 5% of the population works in agriculture. In Moldova, agri-food sector, if taking account also the industry, food industry, it's about 20% of GDP and about 25% of population which work there. So basically you don't have other sectors of economy which can support this transition. So the solution, if talks about the transition, is develop the other sectors, the second sector, the third type of sector, services, production, and take money from those sectors and invest in transition for agriculture. So this is like it's, as I said, basic economics. This is the only solution. It should not banks or other financial institutions should pay for this. The only who should pay for this is the state, the government. But the government at the same time, in order to pay this money and explain to the society why they pay this money and do not, I don't know, build some roads or give some social security for the people, additional one. The government should explain to the society that actually those investments, they are needed because without them, in the long term, all of us will be affected. Because if today the drought affect only, let's say, agriculture, tomorrow it will affect other type of sectors. Because, for instance, high temperature in the south part of Moldova destroy roads, and it affect the transportation sector and other type of sectors. So basically, the only way is to develop other sectors, take money from there, invest in transition in agriculture, and then explain to the society that we need to do this because of A, B, C to D arguments. The only way, this is the only solution. You cannot take money from, of course, you can invest a lot, invent a lot of the financial instruments for this. You can, you know, take bonds or something like this. So the financial instruments which state can use on this for this is there is a lot of solutions, but the main idea is that always the state, the government should pay for this. So basically, the society should pay, and the money should be taken from different sectors which are with higher production, not production, how to say it, higher. Return of investment, higher productivity, yeah, and invest in lower productivity, which is agriculture, basically.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and I like the way you bring in the consumer into the discussion, because this is what we're trying to do in the FAO when we talk about agri-food systems. Everybody is in there. It's the consumer, the investor, it's the farmer, the trader, the processor. Everybody comes in. And it's part of this food system, this agri-food system. If Armenia would like to make a contribution on this debate, otherwise I would very quickly wrap up. Would you like to share a thought on issues related to where is the money and the efforts that the country is doing to attract investment beyond the foreign direct investment, which I understood was what you were referring to before?
Just a couple of words I would like to add what my colleague has said. I also believe that in order to ensure proper, adequate investments into agriculture, we need to raise money at proper interest rates. And, to make huge profit to get from banks with high interest rates, it is not appropriate. Yes, this is the task of the government.
Okay, so if nobody would like to make a contribution, then I would end this session by reminding ourselves that through yesterday and today, we looked at two normative instruments which are there, ready to be used if you'd like to, which your governments, as part of the Committee on World Food Security, have helped to produce, which are guidelines to the progressive realization of the right to food, and guidelines on how to invest to contribute to the progressive realization of the right to food from the point of view of food and agriculture. Those two instruments have been massaged quite intensively in Latin America and the Caribbean. We were part of this process with Victor. There is plenty of experience there. If you'd like to know more about this, please get in contact with us and we can share documents which might be of interest to the constituency. And with that, I will close this session and hand it over to Victor. And thank you for your contribution to the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro, and we appreciate the valuable contributions of Honorable Wali Galumian from Armenia, Honorable Trubka from Moldova, and Honorable Suna from Tajikistan for your country-level perspective you have shared. So also, Pedro, thank you for that brilliant moderation, as always. So now we'll take a short coffee break to recharge and continue with our discussion. So we will reconvene here in 25 minutes to continue the agenda. Thank you very much. Honorables, we're about to start. So if you could take your seats. Okay, thank you. Welcome back to everyone. I hope you had a refreshing and you had the chance to recharge during the break. So as we move forward to the conclusion of our event, it's time, I think, to reflect a little on the key insights we have gained during yesterday and today's discussion. So we will now begin to our wrap-up sessions, followed by our closing remarks. So let's take this opportunity to consolidate the discussions and look ahead to the next steps. So I have the honor to announce to Honorable Mr. Arden Pelumbi, Chairperson of the Committee on Manufacturing, Trade and Environment of the Parliament of Albania. Honorable Arden will provide an overview of the 2 days of events and the main results. So, Honorable, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victor. Honorable delegates and members of Parliament, for 2 days, we, representatives of 22 parliaments, gathered here in this room to discuss and exchange on the most pressing issues pertinent to agri-food system transformation and the potential of regional cooperation and partnership. Addressing existing challenges requires multi-stakeholder engagement, including here governments, UN agencies, civil society, and the private sector. While government institutions play a key role in implementation, we, parliamentarians, are strategically positioned to ensure that sustainable transformation of agri-food system is a priority in our national political agendas. The focus discussion in breakout sessions centered around topics of right to food, climate change, digitalization, and food safety and security, food security. Participants shared their experience and exchanged ideas and proposed courses of action for FAO to support the countries further. They identified the main challenges facing agri-food system transformation in the national context and dove deep to discuss various angles of innovation, climate change, right to food, and food security to drive forward the sustainability and development agenda. One important message that came up in our debates and discussion is that a participatory approach is very important. No one should be left behind. We must learn from one another and cooperate better at all levels. Awareness raising, education, and consultation, especially with the younger generation, are especially important for sustainable transformation, long-term sustainability, and fulfilling SDG commitments. As you saw, and as we saw from the reports of the breakout sessions and the plenary and panel discussions, the exchanges were rich and informative. And I consider all of it When considering that, I came up with a question: how can FAO support and engage with the national parliaments further? Cooperation between FAO and parliaments should focus on the promotion of and supporting of policies that are in line with FAO goals and national ones, such as food security and elimination of hunger and rural development. Parliaments can also use evidence-based FAO expertise and resources to support policy making in their countries. This means drafting legislation that reflects the best global practices and emerging trends in agriculture and food systems, including here responsible investment in sustainable food systems, addressing food security, and promoting healthy diets. Parliamentarians can also participate in FAO-led events on issues such as climate change adaptation, gender issues, innovation, right to food, and smallholder support. This would, of course, foster greater cooperation with counterparts from other countries. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this important parliamentary meeting on agri-food system transformation, I want to emphasize the key takeaways from our meeting today. First, it is clear that a holistic approach is essential to driving sustainable change in our agri-food systems. We must prioritize innovation, resilience, and inclusivity to ensure that our policies are of benefit to all stakeholders, from farmers to consumers. Secondly, collaboration across sectors, government, industry, and civil society will be of crucial importance in addressing the challenges we face, including here climate change, food security, and economic disparities and inequalities. We have seen inspiring examples of successful partnerships, and it is vital that we build on these. Lastly, let us commit to ongoing dialogue and action. The transformation of our agri-food systems is not an one-time thing, but a continuous process that requires our sustained attention and efforts. Together, we can create a future where our food systems are sustainable, equitable, and capable of meeting the needs of our growing population. Thank you all for your valuable contributions and for your time today. Let us work together to turn our discussions into tangible results for our communities and for our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Pelumbi, for that insightful and comprehensive overview. Also for attending this event, this two-day event. We are now honored to welcome Ms. Fiona McClune, UN Resident Coordinator in Albania. Fiona, it's a privilege to invite you to deliver closing remarks of today's meeting. Following your remarks, Mr. Raymond Gele, Regional Program Leader of the FAO Regional Office in Europe and Central Asia, will officially close the event. So, Fiona, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Much, Parliamentarian. It's a great pleasure to be here in the Parliament to address you. It is my first time actually speaking in Parliament. It's a forum which I see very often on television, so it's also an honor for me to be here today. I want to start my brief remarks by congratulating Albania, for the Albanian hosts for convening this gathering of parliamentary representatives from across the region. It is a very big and wide region, and it's excellent that they've been able to come together here and to bring those that are working on agriculture and rural development together. I understand that this is the first ever meeting of this kind, bringing together leaders to discuss the agri-food system
And it comes at a really crucial moment when we face interconnected challenges in food security, nutrition, climate change, and diversity loss. Albania's leadership in hosting this important event demonstrates their commitment to addressing these issues here and encouraging a fruitful discussion across the region. This event also, I'm sure, provided an opportunity for you and colleagues across the region to revisit the commitments that have been made in the Global Food Systems Summit and in the recent Global Parliamentary Summit against hunger and malnutrition in Chile. The topics discussed ranged from legislative measures to strengthen the food security to the role of parliamentary networks in transforming the agri-food system and driving sustainable change. This event is also set the stage for the region's coherent contribution to the next Global Parliamentary Summit that will be in 2026. As parliamentarians, you play a critical role in ensuring that governments remain on track to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. And I want to use the other side of my folder here to remind us of the Sustainable Development Goals, the ambition that is set behind them, and actually how far we are behind in delivering these goals. Last week, I had the honor to be in New York with my fellow resident coordinators from across the world. And in our discussion with the Deputy Secretary General, she reminded us of how much still needs to be done to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, as member states across the region have committed. So your role as parliamentarians in holding your governments to account, in shaping policies, passing legislation, and allocating resources that can support the transformation of agri-food systems is vital. Your role also can foster cross-sectoral coordination, engaging civil society, the private sector, and international organizations to promote innovative and inclusive approaches to drive sustainable rural development, enhance food security, and ensure equitable access to nutritional diets. Your oversight, particularly on budgetary functions, is equally important to ensure that the agri-food systems remain resilient, particularly at times of crisis. So I wish you the best wishes for your deliberations that have happened over the last 2 days, for follow-up discussions that will be held in the context of people you may have met and connected. And I encourage you to take full advantage of the field trip, which I understand comes this afternoon, to learn a little bit more about Albania and the agri-food system here. I'm confident that the outcomes of this parliamentary meeting will have strengthened your networks and will lead to meaningful actions in the future to transform the agri-food systems in the region. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Fiona, for also making really the connection of the work here, also of the parliamentarians, also to the Sustainable Development Goals. I think a lot also has been said, and so I think it's my task, and I see my task here as really closing and thanking you. So, honorable parliamentarians, colleagues, distinguished also guests, Fiona and also Arben, as we come to the conclusion of this also event, I first want to sincerely thank you for your active engagement and also the commitment over these last 2 days. Your presence and especially having presence from 22 countries of the region and across the region reflects that your contributions have been invaluable, and it is clear that parliamentarians will continue to play a central role in transforming our agri-food systems to be more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient, to contribute to achieve, as Fiona also was mentioning it,
the Sustainable Development Goals. I think the discussion in these 2 days have really addressed a broad range of crucial issues. Arben has eloquently also summarized them, from climate resilience, sustainable agriculture, social equity, and also innovation. And I'm, of course, not going to repeat and going into the details, but I think one key message is really clear. The work you're doing is vital, and parliamentarians are essential in driving legislative changes to address the challenges and to unlock the opportunities for future generation when we're talking about food systems, when we talk about agri-food systems transformation. Let me thank, first of all, with very deep gratitude to Her Excellency, the Speaker of the Parliament of Albania, Ms. Spiro Pali, for hosting us with such generosity in this historic venue. And I think, as Fiona was also saying, for some of us from international organization, it was the first time to be also in such a historic event. And I think it has been an incredible experience for us. And I would really like to thank again for the warm hospitality of the Albanian Parliament, which we have also here experienced. Let me thank again also very specifically Arben Pelumbi, whose leadership, support, and engagement has been really instrumental in making this event possible. Arben, your dedication in advancing sustainable agriculture in Albania is, in this case, truly visible. I want to pause and use the opportunity for a very specific applause. Of course, I would like to continue to thank the FAO headquarters team, Victor and also Jean-Leonard, who have been here yesterday, with the continuous support throughout this process, and particularly connecting such regional event also to the global event, which has been taking place last year in America, in South America, in Chile, and looking, of course, also forward how Fiona was also mentioning it, the contribution of this event into also the future global events. So I think this is definitely very important, and we're thankful to our headquarters. I would, of course, also thank Livia Bisikova from IISD, who is somebody who is working since many years already on the role of the parliamentarians, and the technical contributions in this case are very vital in bringing our agenda further forward. Let me thank also the colleagues from the Regional Office for Europe and Central Asia, the technical teams who have facilitated breakout sessions, who have facilitated also the discussion in order to be able to have this critical dialogue, in order to forward our discussion in the agenda. But I would also like to thank the regional office, and particularly in this case, Daria and Cholpon, for the organization of this event, because of course it's a challenge in order to do that. And in this context, I definitely also need to thank the FAO representation country staff here in Albania for their tireless commitment in making this event also happening. Fiona, thank you very much for being with us also here for this insightful and particularly the final also conclusion, bringing us again also into the broader context. And of course, if I'm on the list of thanking, I would like to thank the IT team from the Parliament, which I think also faced some challenges at the beginning, the IT team of the regional office, in order to make this happen. I think a parliamentarian event where we have, of course, many languages is always a challenge in order to have such a discussion. But I think all of us and all of you will agree with me that we had a very good debate, and reflecting also the cultural, let's say, diversity of many languages in the European and Central Asia region. And we're looking in this case also forward. And of course, without the commitment of our interpreters, we would be certainly not able to have such a, let's say, detailed and such insightful discussion on the technical subject. So I have thanked quite a number of you, and probably the question is now, what is going to come next? As we move forward, I'm really also pleased to share with you that we are going to prepare a report which is going to come out of this meeting with the deliberations, with the outcomes of the discussions, the summary, which also Arben has also presented. And I think the report will provide really a comprehensive overview and ensures that the valuable insights are shared here will also contribute to an ongoing dialogue and actions which we need for the agri-food systems. And I'm certainly also hopeful that this meeting, the first parliamentarian summit which we had of chairs of the Agrarian Committee, of members of the parliament dealing with agri-food systems, that this has helped to establish also connections amongst you that will lead to a continuous exchange and collaboration in the future. And we, of course, encourage, in this case, the ongoing discussion and sharing, in this case, also best practices as we collectively, I think, work together on our shared goals. And we're looking, of course, also forward to host and to organize the second parliamentary summit in the coming years. And of course, I cannot hide that we're looking also in the future for a host. So I'm already announcing in this case, if there are hosts ready to do so, we are certainly open to enter into the discussion. So in closing, let me emphasize again also that today's event is really just the beginning, in my views, of a journey here in the region, and your continued engagement and leadership, I think, is crucial in shaping the agri-food systems in the region. Thank you very much again for your participation, dedication, and I'm looking forward to a positive outcome. And of course, I hope you are going to enjoy also this afternoon the field trip. Unfortunately, from my side, I'm unfortunately not able to participate, but you will be in good hands, of course, also of the Parliament and the FAO team. So with this, I would like to close and wish you a good, safe journey back home, and looking forward to see you still a bit over lunch. We're gonna have the lunch now again also in the Plaza Hotel, and then for the field trip. So thank you very much, Parliamentarian.